Everybody, this is Gail. Hope you're doing okay. You're plowing through this and getting very close to the end. So this week you have the benchmark project. They have always done two papers this week. They used to turn them in separately, Part D, Part E. Now they call it the benchmark, and they've combined them. But really, the individual ingredients are the same. So what I did is I put out the template for D and E, and all you're going to do is stuff them together then in one paper instead of turning in two. Each one of these is listed as 500 to 750 words. I always say, just in scientific writing, you need to be to the point. There's no flowery language. It's just the facts. And so being succinct is much better than adding stuff that doesn't need to be there. As long as you put your headers in and follow the criteria, you're going to get everything that you need into each part of the paper here. So the change model, you're going to identify one of the theories of change. You can choose whichever one you want. They give you some examples. Some people use Rogers diffusion. You can use whatever you want. The main thing is, when you're doing this part of the change component of the paper, you not only need to explain the theory itself and cite it with evidence, but you also need to apply it to your project. So make sure that I can pick out in there where you've actually taken the theory and said how you're going to use it in your own project here. In this paper, unlike how we used to do it before, you will also be making a conceptual model. So you're going to add that into this paper as an appendix. And then, of course, in the final paper, it'll be an appendix as well. So the conceptual model, when you go into almost any change theory, most any theory, they're going to have some diagram of it to try to make it easier. Little squares, little circles, little arrows going everywhere. And so you want to use the change theory model, conceptual model that you're using, but then plug in the parts that make it or customize it to your own project. So I don't want you just to cut and paste Rogers diffusion of innovation model in there. You need to go in and actually make it your own. And you can do this in a PowerPoint slide and take a screenshot. You can do it in a Word document. There's ways to just kind of paste different types of shapes in there and then put a text box in. If you need help doing that, I can try to coach you. It's been a little while, but I could probably try to get you through that. And that's the change part of the paper, Part D. Then you move on to Part E, implementation plan. And this is where you're specifically telling me how you're going to implement this project. I know for many of you it's hypothetical, or it's out in the future when you're going to be doing it, but I still need you to get down to the nitty-gritty of how you're going to do it. So when you talk about resources, and number one, you're going to have a header for that, resources. You're going to talk about how many people it's going to take, what it's actually going to cost in dollars and cents, what you estimate, and I need to see those actual numbers. Is it's going to take 3 people from IT for 2 weeks to set up your program? Your data collection tool is going to take 3 people to collect data over 2 or 3 weeks or 6 months. How much is that actually going to cost? What is training of these individuals going to cost? Do you have to buy any new software for the computers for this? Any new equipment at all? All of those things. I need to know estimates of actually what they're going to cost. You can make this easier for yourself by making a table if you want for the timeline. I believe timeline's in this one. Let me go out here and make sure. If it's not, then yes, timeline, number 4. So you can make tables for all of these things, your budget, your timeline, and make it a little bit easier on yourself. You'll need a little paragraph to explain what you're talking about. And whenever you put in a table or any type of appendix or anything within your paper, you always need to refer to it somewhere in your paper. So if you're writing about that timeline, then somewhere in there you want to say see table B, timeline, see budget, table A. You always want to refer to them. And look up in APA how to actually put those into your papers and how to label that table. Each one of them has to be labeled, and there's a certain way to do it, of course. So number 1 is your resources, human, fiscal, and other. Number 2, establish the feasibility of your implementation date. So you're going to pick a date out there in the future and talk about, is it feasible? And then it lists some other things in there to go in. Again, more of a budget plan, and you can put that into a table. List specific barriers, real or potential, that you see. Maybe you've made this budget, but you don't really know where the money's coming from. You know that you have to get administrative approval for this. You may have to get a grant, something like that. Speak to any barriers that you have and how you're going to handle them. And then the amount of time, number 4, needed to complete the project. This is a timeline. You can throw it into a table. Just get really detailed for me. I have seen in the past where it's there's 1 square for start of the project, 1 square for data collection, and 1 square for publishing. And there's a lot more to it than that. There's getting IRB approval. There's setting up the programs with IT, having those meetings, training of data collectors, training of educators, the education itself. All of these things. Get down to the detail in your timeline. Actually get yourself in there like you're really going to do it and experience. That's the point of the project, is to experience how much time this really takes, so that when you do go and do one, you know the depth and scope of it. So of course you're going to have all of this referenced. I need to see at least 2 to 3 scholarly references in there. You're going to get 1 to 2 just with your change model. Nothing that you say as a fact cannot be cited. None of the people in this class at this point can be considered subject matter experts for this paper. It's an evidence-based paper, so we want you to use evidence to support. So if you point out any evidence, any fact at all, you have to put a citation in there. I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now, is people feel like they're just citing every single sentence, and that's okay. If they are different citations through the paragraph, yeah, you need to cite individually each sentence. If the whole paragraph is from one source, you can just cite it at the end, except for if it's a direct quote. You, of course, need to cite that separately with a page number. And in many of your papers, I've mentioned that I don't really like direct quotes. The purpose of this is for me to see you read the literature, analyze it, spit it out in your own words. That is paraphrasing. And then cite the author. That's what I want to see more so than direct quotes. Really, in scientific writing, the only time you use direct quotes is if there's something historically significant, a classical piece, to where if you change the words and paraphrase it, it would truly take away from the meaning or the significance of it. Otherwise, you should never use direct quotes in scientific writing. Okay? Even when you're going through it, maybe you're citing some literature on the background of a study and going through other studies that have been done like this, and you're quoting out their statistics, you still paraphrase that, put it in your own words, and cite. So that is this week's project in a nutshell. You guys are doing very well on your discussion boards. I really appreciate that. Lots of references in there, lots of detail. You're taking different angles so that you can excuse me, help others in the class learn. Everything that you add adds to the body of the classroom. I mean, we all have the same question. If we all post the same thing, we're not really helping our peers learn anything, and we're not learning anything either. So take a little word out of there, take a different angle, look something up, find a study on it, and report on that. So I hope you guys know that you can call me anytime. You can text me. I generally see your call and call you back, especially if there's a voicemail. If for some reason I don't, then give me another call again. I mean, I'm old. I'm 55. Who knows? I saw it and I just blinked it off and said I would get to it later, and I didn't. So no problem if you call me, text me, okay? I hope you guys have a happy 4th of July. And since I use these videos over again, if it's not 4th of July for you in another class that's coming up that uses this video, happy next holiday to you. You guys have a great weekend and take care. Thanks for all the work you do. You're doing great, and you're almost there.